How's it going? Look how full this is. You guys realize it's spring and you're supposed to all be gone from church now through the summer, right? I'm just kidding. That's a pastor joke. Hey, we say it all the time. I know that Monday night, we'll be here tomorrow night. Have you guys been in the Monday night service yet? You guys ought to check those out. We've been coming, I like, no offense, but there's just something about the Monday nights that are so unique. The sermon is the video, but it's live worship. There's pizza. I'm telling you, it's quickly working its way. The biggest ones we've had have been the last few weeks. Like, it's just continually growing. So Monday night, we say it all the time. If you're watching online, here's what I know. Here's what I'm getting a kick out of. One of the new things happening in my life, and I'm going to share it with you, is I have people now that I would not consider church people. Which, as you look around, you're like, there's a lot of us that don't look like church people. But I get approached by people outside of the church. How's that? And they're like, hey, you can always tell when it's coming. You can always tell what they're going to say. They're like, hey, I've been like watching the thing, and thanks. And it's almost like, it's legal. There's no one that's going to like, but so here's what I want to say. If that is you, if you are watching and you don't want people to know, you're just kind of in the safety of your own little bubble, I want you to know that is awesome, because what that means is that God is doing something. God is working on people, whether you're here in person, whether it's through whatever sort of a platform. I know that God's working, and here's what we're going to pray as a church this week. Keep it in mind, is that God begins to make himself real to people who have otherwise thought of themselves as being like on the outside or in a different spot or in a different place, people who have felt far from what God is doing. It's my hope that God is able to start pulling people in where they start to feel like that there is a relationship that they can have. So I don't think I'll ever get comfortable talking into a camera, ever. I think that too many selfies are an indicator of mental illness, and I stand by that. I will give you the background on this in here in just a minute, but I'm going to read you 6 verses, and then we're going to break down what we're seeing. In 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 1, it says, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, stay here, the Lord has sent me to Bethel. But Elijah said, as surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you. So they went down to Bethel. The company of the prophets of Bethel came out to Elisha and asked, do you know that your Lord is going to take your master from you today? This will give you a little indicator. This is a little hint, and we're going to go back and look at what we're reading. But the little hint, the little indicator of the mood in the room. Have you ever heard anybody tell you, hey, read the room? Have you ever known one person that's just so socially unaware that they're telling jokes at kind of a tense moment, and it's like, not the time. Read the room. You can kind of read the room in this sentence. Elisha replied, yes, I know, so be quiet. Verse 4, then Elijah said to him, stay here, Elisha. The Lord has sent me to Jericho. And he replied, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So they went to Jericho. The company of the prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, repetitive, here we go again, do you know the Lord is going to take your master from you today? He said, yes, I know, so be quiet. Verse 6, then Elisha said to him, stay here, the Lord has sent me to the Jordan. And he replied, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So the two of them walked on. So Elijah tells Elisha, stay here in 3 different places. And how many of you guys, this is my favorite thing in the Bible anymore, is that when I read something that I don't understand or that I don't get, I like going back and going, what am I missing here? I think it used to be that I was okay with just going, I don't get it. I'm going to keep reading. And anymore, it feels like the older I get and the more information that's available. I mean, we live in a time where if you want information on something, you can find it. And so I love times like this where you read through it and you don't necessarily grasp it at first. But he said, stay here in 3 different places: Bethel, Jericho, and Jordan. Those are the 3 places where Elijah, the mentor, Elijah, the spiritual leader, Elijah, sort of the authority, tells his follower, Elisha, stop, stay here. I think there's significance in those 3 places. Let me pray real quick. And here's what I'm going to pray, and here's what I'm going to ask you to pray, is that God is able to work through where I fall short, and that I believe this. I believe that the God who created you with a purpose, and this sounds like words, I assure you this is not wordsmithing. I want you to hear my heart, that there is a desire from God to connect with you this morning in a way that's meaningful and personal, that is just between you and him. Your connection to God does not have to go through me. Your connection to God does not have to come through this church. We want to do the best we can do to facilitate it, but that ultimately God has something for you this morning. Let me pray. Lord, I pray for exactly that. I pray for clarity in moments where you have a desire to reach out and in a personal way connect to people right where they're at, right in their life situation, right in their family situation, right in their work situation, whatever is going on, that God, you have a desire to be engaged with us. And God, as we engage with you and as we learn to engage with each other, God, that there's a better life for us. I pray in Jesus' name, amen. If you were like me growing up, my family, we 3 boys. So as you can imagine, it was just nonstop fights. And we'd fight about anything. Literally, we could fight about fighting. Like it was just 3 boys. And my family raised me with this as our sort of our code of ethics. You can make mistakes. You can screw up. You can do things wrong. You can get away with a lot. There's a lot that's forgivable. But you are not allowed to ever quit. You can make mistakes, but you cannot give up. And as I've grown older, what I realize is that's sort of an incomplete thought, because there are some times that you really should quit. Like it's sort of this nuanced thing, like this idea of like never, ever, ever quit. I took that as like when you're arguing with your wife, when you've got bad habits, like never quit. I think it's important that you understand the concept, but we also understand the relationship with the nuance of how that works. Because, hey, quitter in the Weaver household, that was a swear word. Like if you called somebody a quitter, you didn't just throw it out casually. If you called somebody a quitter, it was like, I didn't want to say this. You're a quitter. It's like a personality defect. So let's do this. Let's just see if we can understand the concept behind what's going on with Elijah and Elisha. What's going on in Galatians? The Apostle Paul writes this, and it seems to be very clear, but when you dig down in there, this is one of those verses that just falls open and has a lot more meaning. It says this in Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Now, that sounds so simple. Like, I think being raised in the environment that I was raised in, it was like, no, you better not quit living for Jesus, because you do it right. We all know this, right? This is the old saying about being a pastor. The pay's not great, but the retirement's amazing. It's a heaven joke, see? And don't quit doing good. You get out there and you just white knuckle it and you just live for Jesus. And when the sinners are doing sin things, you don't do it. And I would say like the sound of my Christianity for almost 30 years was just... And then it says, but don't get weary. You're like, okay. I thought quitting, I grew up thinking that quitting was going to be so much easier to identify. Because, hey, if I'm playing baseball with my brothers and I get hit with a pitch, you just hopefully you throw down whatever's in your hand. You got to quit. I quit. Baseball, man, I quit. How are we going to play with only, I quit. I don't care. I quit. I'm out. Those moments are easy to identify. I want to quit. You want to quit playing football? You just take your helmet off. You take your paddle. I quit. I'm out. I was at school one time when a kid quit school. He just quit. I'm not going to school anymore. I'm done. And honestly, it wasn't like it was the greatest school in the world anyway, so I probably didn't really miss out on that much other than a piece of paper. Have you ever seen, I've got a daughter, and she's 7 years old, and I didn't realize this. As a dad, I've learned that dramatic behavior is not learned. It's just woven into their DNA. It is just part of their makeup. I have watched as my daughter quit a friendship. I quit. Done. D-O-N-E. No more. No more. Everybody in a fight? Everybody in an argument? Like it's this, I quit. And like I said, I thought that quitting was those moments. I thought it would be easy of like, if I was going to quit something, I would know the moment that it happened. Moms, you ever just wanted to just quit? And you're like, I can't even quit, because if I quit, no, the whole family's, I can't even quit. The older I get, what I learned is that quitting isn't something that happens in a moment. Quitting is something that happens gradually. Quitting is something that happens over time. Let me give you an example. I'm not proud of it, but it's just such a good analogy. I wish there was a better one. I got home from Arizona. We don't have a scale in Arizona. I see that some of you have had this moment as well. And the first time I stepped on the scale, I was like, when did I quit paying attention? Like, it wasn't like I just decided, like, that's it, I'm done. And because of my father's genetics, it always shows up right there. Anybody else have this? Right there? And now it's all I see. You go to the mirror and you're like, ugh. When did I quit? I didn't even know that I quit. I quit paying attention. I didn't even know. It sneaks up on you. And what I know is that the author of Galatians, Paul, he knows this. He's like, I'm not worried about you getting mad and like, that's it, God, we are done. The word good, so when it says, let us not grow weary in doing good, the word good in the original Greek is actually translated into two words, beautiful and with excellence. With excellence and beautiful. And what Paul is saying is don't grow weary of living life in a beautiful manner. There's an artistic nature to that verse where Paul is saying life is beautiful and life is worth living. There is a preciousness to life. Don't lose it. See, that's a totally different thing than you better not. You better not. See, and I think that's gotten all the bad press. I think for a long time, God has gotten a bad rap of like, you better not, you better not. This verse is God's way of encouraging you of like, there's a beauty to life that if you find it is worth it. Don't lose the beauty and the excellence that I've got for you. And when you lose it, it's because somewhere in there that things have become a distraction. And I would venture to guess that you have quit on things in your life. You have quit on doing things with excellence, not in a moment, but gradually and over time. So here's the history of Elijah and Elisha in this moment, is that Elijah, they've been together for about 7 years. They've been serving together. They've been working together. They've been shoulder to shoulder. Every time Elijah went anywhere, Elisha had been there. And about 7 or 8 years into this process, Elijah knows something's about to change. He knows that something's coming. Even if he can't put his finger on exactly what's coming, he knows that a change is coming. And let me tell you, as a leader, there's nothing worse than leading without clarity. It is the most exposed you will ever feel in your life when you have a group of people that are like, what are we doing? And you're like, I don't know. Then why are we following you? And you're like, good question. So that's Elijah. Elisha, imagine the amount of faith to follow a leader that isn't exactly sure. Imagine the faith it requires from Elisha, who's like, I'm following you. And Elijah's like, well, I don't know exactly what's coming. I can't tell you. Why don't you just stay here? Because humanity would dictate like, hey, I'm nothing special. Every resignation letter I've ever written as a lead pastor that I've never turned in has started with, I don't even know why anyone listens to me. Don't follow me. I don't know what I'm doing. And Elisha is saying, this is what I committed to. I didn't commit to your vision. I committed to you. I'm following you. So this is where we pick up this story. And like I said, Elijah encourages Elisha to stop in 3 places. Anybody remember what they were? Bethel, Jericho, and anybody remember? The Jordan. You guys have way better memories than me because I was like, if they're listed specifically, I think they have a purpose, there's a value, there's a meaning. And so when you start to look at the significance of those 3 areas, it starts to paint a picture of how quitting takes place. Listen, there is a joy to living with excellence. Have you ever had a time where you feel just really, really, really inspired? You wake up in the morning, you're like, today's the day, and you're just inspired and it's fun and you're gonna cross your T's and dot your I's. Anybody have periods like it's fun? Like when you're living with excellence and you feel driven and passionate and excited and you're like, yes. Anybody ever wake up on the first day of branding season? Yeah, we got some hands. We got 2 hands from the same person. I get it. But life will not maintain your excitement level. Listen to me. Life will not maintain that level of excitement. So when God encourages you to maintain your level of excellence, it's not so that when you're excited and fun and everything's good and you feel good, that's not what it's talking about. It says maintain the excellence in moments where it's difficult. Live with optimism, live with expectation, live with passion. Demand it of yourself that you live with a certain level of expectation. And I see your faces, and it's the same face I make because I'm like, I don't always do that. Sometimes I just don't want to get out of bed. Sometimes I just literally want to quit everything. Like listen, the reason I'm able to communicate this concept is it's something that I'm in the middle of still learning. Is there are times where I'm like, I don't see the passion for today. I don't see the purpose for today. I'm doing something and no one sees it. So let's look at the 3 places. If we can understand the significance of those 3 places, we're going to understand the traps that we can fall into when it comes to quitting. Verse 2, Elijah said to Elisha, stay here, the Lord has sent me to Bethel. Bethel was a crossroads. Bethel is the second most mentioned city right behind Jerusalem. It was on its way to the hill country of Hebron north to Shechem in the north to Hebron in the south. Its main east-west routes were leading from Jericho to the Mediterranean Sea. So when you got to Bethel, you were at a crossroads. You were on your way somewhere. So when you got to Bethel, you had the option of 3 directions or going back. Bethel was this representation of a crossroads. Let me tell you, one of the most common periods where people give up is at a crossroads. There's nothing worse than starting down a road and instantly regretting it or instantly thinking, what if I picked the wrong choice? Anybody ever been here? You make a decision, but you're like, ooh, what if I messed up? What if I didn't? And the enemy will come in and convince you that you've done it wrong. He will convince you that you've made a mistake, and he will rob you of the excellence of the moment. The reason that Elijah told Elisha to stay put in Bethel was because in Bethel and in crossroads, that is an area that we so commonly give up. We're not committed to one, and so we're not committed to anything. Life is difficult when you have options. It's easier to get distracted, and I think distraction is almost the definition of quitting. Distraction is when you're going in so many different directions, you're actually not going anywhere. And you get distracted when there's options, and distraction turns into quitting not in a moment, because if somebody were to go, hey, I see that you started down this path and you're working on life and things are going well, you should just quit. We'd go, no. But you catch yourself quitting when you're like, I got the bills, I got the kids, I got the schedule, and I got my I'm just got to sit down. Distraction leads to quitting over a period of time. And let me tell you another one. Offense, guys, we don't say offended. I know this. I'm talking to the men for a second. We don't use words like offended. I get it. No grown man since I started this church has ever said, I'm just really offended. Because I would say, you need to be a grown-up. We don't say offended. I'm offended. I'm just so offended. What guys do when we want to say we're offended, what we say is like, listen. When a guy starts with listen, what he's saying is, I got my little feelers hurt. It's code, if you know what you're listening for. When you are offended, you find yourself at a crossroads where you go, do I want to continue or do I want to go a different direction? It is so easy to quit in moments of offense. And let me just tell you something. When you decide to not get offended, you are not giving a stamp of approval to what offended you. This is fire right now. I don't know if you guys are hearing this, but I hope you are. This is absolute truth. That when you make a decision, I will not be offended, it is not a stamp of approval on what offended you. It's just saying, I'm not going to let your crap get on me. I'm just not going to do it. You can be crazy, but you're going to be crazy all by yourself. And you're going to sit over there in your little circle of crazy, and it's not going to get on to me because I'm not going to be offended. It's okay to decide I'm not going to be offended. That doesn't mean I have to approve of it. This is groundbreaking in 2019. It's like we feel like, well, if it doesn't offend us, then we've approved of it. No, it doesn't. But there's pressure in the crossroads. Second place goes to Jericho. Now, we've all heard the story of Jericho. It was the first stronghold they came to. It's a city, it's this fortified city. It was with walls. Remember, they march around it and like the walls fall. Remember this story? Rahab, all that. But if you fast forward, Jericho was no longer a place of the enemy. Jericho was now this place of peace and tranquility, and it was this easygoing place. It's kind of like what you would imagine, like a rehab facility almost. Like it's easy going, and there's no pressure, and there's no attacks from the enemy. Jericho is where King David sent his soldiers when they had been humiliated in battle. Do you know how they humiliated the soldiers in battle? They cut off their hair and their beards. Whatever. And David says, go to Jericho and recover. So when Elijah says to Elisha, stay in Jericho, what he's saying is, stay in a place of peace. We don't think of peace as being a bad thing, and I'm not saying that peace is a bad thing. What I am saying is if we're not careful, we can get distracted when things are going well. Sometimes when there's difficulty and there's pressure and there's just stuff and life is hard, we want to go to God and we're like, God, you got to do something. But let me admit to you something as your pastor that I am not proud of. There has never been a time where I'm like, I will not pray all week. I've never quit praying in a moment. But I've had lots of times where my prayer time starts with, I'm so sorry. Hi, I'm Jordan. No, it's been a while. Hey, you're driving down the road and somebody pulls out in front of you, instant prayer. Why? Because there's pressure and you're like, oh, Jesus. It's important, the context of how you say that. But sometimes things are just okay. Sometimes things are just fine. The bills are paid. There's no crisis. Everybody's healthy. Horses are sound. Things are just good. They're just good. And we quit living with excellence because we don't feel the pressure. You see what I'm saying? We don't feel pressure. We don't feel drawn towards excellence. We just are kind of coasting. Let me tell you, guys, you will get in the most trouble when you are bored. I am a big believer of this, is that, guys, I'm speaking to the men for a second, you were created to be tired when you go to sleep. I feel like I was going to get some amens from the wives. I was just waiting. No? Okay. There is nothing worse on this planet than a bored male. Finally, an amen. Men, you are insufferable when you are bored. So what Elisha is given the opportunity, like, just stay here. Just stay here. Has anybody ever read, I will admit I have not, so just judge me all you want. But has anybody ever read the book, The Odyssey? Don't raise your hand because I'll feel like you're rubbing it in. There's a part of this story where they're on this journey home, and they get to this island, and this island has what's called the lotus plant, and the lotus plant is the equivalent of like a narcotic, and they send out soldiers to go scout, and these soldiers discover this plant, and as they begin to indulge in the plant, they just sort of lose all their ambition. And they're like, why are we even trying to go home? It's good here, comfortable here, fine. They don't even realize they're being tricked into just this tranquility. So they send another batch of soldiers. And finally, ultimately, it ends in a rescue. Like someone who has not bought into the tranquility is like, this is not good. It feels good right now, but we're sacrificing what's next. We are giving up what's next because we're just comfortable where we are. I'm going to tell you this. When there's a lack of purpose, it equals distraction. It equals distraction. Men, if you have a lack of purpose in your life, you will get distracted. And when you get distracted, you will quit on the things that matter. Wives, or husbands, I guess. I'm tattling on myself. I can just feel in my spirit my wife's little eyebrows just going a little higher, like, you can admit that? I'll admit. There are times when I lose track of my purpose because I can't stop looking at my phone. You guys ever had this conversation in your marriage? I don't feel like you're listening to me. Like, no, I'm listening. I'm sorry. Lack of purpose equals distraction. There is pressure. There is pressure present at a crossroads. There is pressure present when there is a lack of vision or purpose or passion. And when there is a lack of difficulty, it is a different kind of pressure, but it is pressure. Your life needs pressure. you need something that's driving you, because in moments where there's no pressure, there's no desire for excellence. That's the second place. Third place was the Jordan River. So I'm going to the Jordan. Whether it was the children of Israel crossing over the Jordan into the promised land, or whether it was Jesus as he begins his public ministry, he's baptized in the Jordan River was always a time of transition. The Jordan River always was significant of transition. That's what it always stood for. And I'm going to tell you, this one probably gets overlooked or hidden the most. But in life, we will go through periods of transition. Your transition will never go from, I used to be older and now I'm younger. It's one transition you will miss. What you will go through is, why does my back hurt all the time? Why am I so sleepy? Guys, I'm saying guys generally, people, have you ever had a moment where you're like, I can do that. I used to do it all the time. And then you try it and you're like, I can't do that anymore. That's a transition. You've transitioned into a new phase. I think if we're not careful, when we get to areas of transition, when Elijah gets to an area of transition of like, hey, I used to really lean into, and I'm not trying to be personal here. I'm not trying to get in your business. Don't judge me. But, hey, I used to feel more attractive than I feel now. I used to get attention that I don't get now. I used to get credit that I don't get now. I used to have this, and now I don't. I used to make more money, and now I don't. I thought I was going to get this promotion, and now I'm not. It is so easy to get discouraged in times of transition. You take on a new responsibility. You take on a new load. Young people, you grow into a new level of responsibility. It is so easy to get overwhelmed with all the new rules of the new season that you get distracted and you quit on what got you there. I don't think that Bethel and Jericho and Jordan were listed accidentally. I think they're such a good example of as people when we quit. Because we think that quitting is going to be that moment like, I've had enough. That is not what quitting is. Quitting is when you look up and you go, what happened? My kids are grown. What about this one? What about in the transition between the time that the kids are born and the time they leave the house, and then all of a sudden the kids leave the house and the empty nesters realize they don't even know each other anymore? That the transition brings pressure. And you've got a married couple that goes, I don't even know why we're doing this anymore. Because somewhere along the line in the transition of raising kids, you quit on the marriage and you didn't even mean to. There's pressure in times of transition. Now, as people, one of the things that we have that is just universal is that we naturally, biologically, we tend to lean away from pressure. There's pressure in all three of these seasons, but if we're not careful, we don't address the issue. We just lean away from the pressure. It's just this human reaction, and we forget this truth, that there is a connection between pressure. I want to repurpose a word just this morning. Just this morning, I'm going to say a word, and don't take it for like cultural context. We're just going to scrap this word. We're going to say it, and I want you to understand the value of what I'm saying, and then like tomorrow, it'll go back to being normal. If I were to say the word precious, you'd think it's like a grandma word. Like when like a baby draws you a picture with a crayon, and you don't know what it is, and it brings it to grandma, and grandma's like, that is so precious. Oh, it walked. That's precious. Let's just scrap that one. When I say precious, what I mean is valuable. Valuable, something that is worth the effort, something that is worth attention, something, a result, whether it's a reward, whether it's a result, whether it's a process, whatever the case may be. There is a connection between pressure and precious, that you do not ever in your life have something precious that did not come through the process of pressure. And if we're not careful, what happens is we get so distracted moving away from the pressure that we sacrifice the precious that comes with it. If we're not careful, then we experience pressure and we go, God, why am I going through this? We question God in times of pressure because we don't understand the connection between the pressure and the precious things that God is doing in your life that cause you to live with excellence, that cause you to live with beauty, this art that is your life that God has created, and his desire is that you live it to the fullest. But if you're going to live it to the fullest, it is through the process of pressure. And we come to crossroads We come to moments of just distraction and tranquility. We come to times of transition. And instead of leaning into the pressure, believing that God is a good God, believing that God's going to use this and do something better, we just sort of just stop. When we quit in moments of pressure, we remove the purpose of the pressure. You hear what I said? That in times of pressure and times of difficulty, you get so distracted that all of a sudden the pressure becomes the focus, and we get so focused on trying to fix what's causing pressure, we don't realize that's what's on the other side of it that's valuable. That if we were to work through that, if we were to lean into it, and we were to recognize that there's good on the other side of pressure, and if we just quit and if we give up, then the pressure had no purpose. So I want to go back 8 years to when Elijah calls Elisha. Because like I said, in times where it really starts rolling, in times where you get good news, in times where you meet that person, or you get the job, or you get the raise, or you buy the new truck, or whatever it is, that your moment of like, yes, and excitement, that's when it's easy. So when you look at Elijah and Elisha, Elisha's easy moment was that he was working on a plow. He had oxen. How am I doing on time? Terrible. I'm going to keep going. He's plowing with these oxen. He was 12th in a line. And knowing what Elisha was going to go on to do, you have to know that Elisha was miserable plowing. And it says that Elijah out of nowhere shows up and calls him to something that will be excellent, that's going to be precious. He's given a gift that was actually, he was prepared for the moment that was precious in moments of pressure. He was working through pressure on the plow. That God had placed Elisha on the plow to prepare him for a moment that would be precious and valuable to him when Elijah called him. Because if Elisha had been in a moment of tranquility and Elijah goes, hey, you can follow me, but it's going to make it difficult, Elisha might have said, It was the pressure that facilitated the precious. So it says that Elijah calls him and it says this. It says Elisha said, let me go kiss my father and mother goodbye. And Elijah says, okay. This is verse 21. It is one of my favorite things in the entire Bible. It says this. You can almost see the face. If you work with cows, everybody knows you got that one cow. There's always one. They miss every gate. They hook the dogs. They don't work. Everybody's got one. And I just imagine, you know my favorite? Well, I'm not going to go there. It says Elisha comes back. And he's got a call. He's got an open door to go pursue this life that God's going to create for him. He has this moment where excellence is going to matter and beauty is going to matter and purpose is going to matter. And he's excited about it. And you can feel the excitement. It says, so Elisha left him, went back. He took his yoke of oxen and he slaughtered them. Finally. Hey, sucker. We're done. He has his own 1017 project. It says he slaughtered his oxen, but he wasn't done there. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat, and he just gave it away. I am done. I am out. You will never see me again. And don't you know that when Elisha is talking to his family, he's like, hey, I got this thing. I'm going. I'm doing it. I'm going. Don't you think that any good parent will go, okay, well, we'll take care of your oxen in case it doesn't work out. Because we were trying to be good parents. We want to make sure, you can always come home. And Elisha's like, hey, you know what? Hold that thought. Starts fire. We are done. What Elisha was doing was he was burning the bridges home. Because pressure will tempt us to quit. And what he was saying was, it's easy right now, and it's fun right now, but I know there's going to be a time where I have to travel through Bethel following someone who doesn't know where he's going. And I'm going to have to travel through Jericho knowing that I'm following somebody who's not 100% clear, who's asking me to give up. I know I'm going to have to go through the Jordan. I know that my life is going to be difficult, but he leaned into the moments of pressure instead of trying to cure what the pressure was. We have got to understand that God will do precious things in your life that you hold valuable, but you've got to travel through seasons of pressure. And if we're not careful, those seasons of pressure, whether it's at a crossroads, whether it's times of just sort of lack of vision, lack of purpose, lack of direction, or in times of transition, you will accidentally quit. You will give up on living with excellence. You will go, why does this even matter? Why is this even a big deal? Nobody's even watching. And God's going, I'm watching. I'm always watching, and I want better for you. Don't quit. Don't give up. It matters, and things that I'm doing are behind the scenes. Remember that it says that God is preparing for you beforehand, that before you even discovered America, that God was doing something in your life beforehand. Don't let what is at hand rob you from what God has prepared beforehand. We've got to learn. And I say that carefully. Like, I don't mean like, we're going to have to learn. I mean, I want to learn. I want to know that God sees me, that God knows that I'm there. And in moments of pressure, that instead of leaning away from the pressure, I recognize this is the process that gets me there. And you won't just quit on purpose. You'll get distracted and you'll look up one day and go, how are the kids this old? When did we stop communicating? When did our marriage fall apart? When did I turn into that person that just gets up and goes to work and comes home and pays the bills and life loses its passion because we didn't realize we were quitting? That's what Paul is saying in Galatians is don't let life steal the beauty. I'm so guilty of this. I might be literally the worst offender of this concept in this whole church. That if I get distracted, it's like life loses its beauty and it loses its excellence and it becomes this dismal, gray just practice of doing what I was doing before and I don't know why, because somewhere along the line, I've quit demanding excellence of myself. I've stopped believing that it mattered. I've stopped believing, and what God says is it will produce a harvest that is worth it. According to you, you will someday say this was worth it. I'll tell you a quick story. We're just over. Sorry. When I was a kid, we didn't have a whole lot of money, and neither did our friends. We didn't realize how poor we were because we were surrounded with other poor people who thought it was normal. And I had one thing I asked for Christmas. One thing. I wanted those gloves, and I own like 7 pairs of them now because I overcorrected. But these gloves, they're like this real soft deer skin or like buckskin. They're yellow, and they've got the lining. You know what I'm talking about? You put your hands in them, you're just like, ah. They're called work gloves, but we all know that sometimes you wear them when it's not even that cold because they're just so comfortable. That's all I wanted. I started in like August, and I'm like, this is all I want. One thing. I want one thing for Christmas. One thing. Hey, what do you have? This one thing. That's it. I was very clear. Yellow, liner, warm, soft, fashionable. Because don't let people lie to you. Cowboys have a very strict sense of fashion. We just pretend that we don't. But these are really in right now. And I just want one pair of them. One thing. So we did like this families got together and we all did it like a gift exchange. And I remember, I'm like, I know what I'm getting. I already know what I'm getting. I already know what I'm getting. I open them. It's like this brown, thick welding gloves. No liner. You can't even bend your fingers. And I just remember being like, I didn't think it was possible that I could hate everyone in the world, but I literally hate everyone. I think there's this fear. If you're being honest, I think there's this fear that we're going to do all the work on our end and that God comes through and rewards you with something that you're like, thank you. Galatians says this. It's like just a moment between you and God where God goes, don't worry. I know exactly who you are. I know you better than you know you. And if we're not careful, we become a society who quits. And we don't even know that we quit because we're still coming to church and we're still, faithful to our families and we're still kind of going through the motions, but life has lost its beauty. It's like there's this fear that it's not going to be worth it. And God's going, just trust me. I know that there's pressure, but pressure is always connected to precious. And I know it's a cliche, but that's how diamonds are made. Beauty is always made through moments of pressure if you just don't quit. If you just don't give up. Make yourself live with excellence when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. And God is saying, just see what I can do with that. Let's pray. Lord, paint this picture in our minds where we can understand it. God, there's so much hidden in that verse that says, don't grow weary from doing good. Don't grow weary from living life with beauty and with excellence. God, that we cannot afford to give up. We cannot afford to quit in moments of pressure because we surrender the things that are precious. God, help us to recognize when we're in the presence of things that are precious, things that actually matter, things that are going to matter later in life, things that matter down the road, and don't let us get distracted enough. Pray in Jesus' name, amen.